today's knowledge session for the interns, but also the topic of our webinar is on accessible design. And what we'll be covering is, first of all, a brief about Kashida, specifically more for Reem than for the interns. The importance of accessible design. Will show a few design examples that you'll be able to answer as questions about what is and what isn't inclusive design. We'll talk about the standard, which is the WCAG 2.2. We'll talk about how we at Kashida implement accessible design, the importance of accessible delivery channels, common pitfalls, and what you can do to avoid them. And then, of course, there will be time for questions at the end. We'll also show you a particular example of a course that we're currently working on, which is adhering to accessible design. So you will see actually a course in that sense. And we also will be showing you like a checklist of different all the different elements of accessible design that you can eventually download after the session. Sometime this week, we'll be sharing it with you that you can download it and use it for implementing accessible design in your work. So let's start with a little brief of Kashida. We started off in 2011. And currently, we have locations in Beirut, in Turkey, and in Cyprus. These are the places where we are currently registered. You can go to our website, kashida-learning.com, especially for you, Reem, if you want to find out more about our services and our products. We have reach all over the world, across many different regions, whether it's the Americas or down in the Gulf, all the way but in between. Some of our clients include the UN, Acted, yeah, you can see them, AFE, we have OSN. So many of the names that you might already be familiar with of international organizations. Our mission is to design and create impact-driven learning experiences, innovatively tailored to learners' needs, with the continual enhancement of learning technology. And if you want it even shorter and sweeter, basically what we aim to do is to give everyone the opportunity to learn simply. We've been recognized as an award-winning company, especially for one of the programs we designed called Ruwad. It's a program we designed for entrepreneurs who are starting their businesses in Saudi Arabia. And for that program, we won the Gold Award for the Learning Technologies Awards in the UK. Anything you want to add, Raneem, before we move on to the content of our presentation? Anything else you want to mention about? All right. So to start off, we really see that accessibility online is as important as accessibility in physical infrastructures. So these days, if you go somewhere and you see that they have a ramp, or you see that they have a particular bathroom that is a bit bigger, this is all to accommodate people who have needs, particular needs for physical accessibility. And we see that online accessibility is equally important, especially that these days the internet has become integrated into everything we do. I don't think there's maybe an hour that passes by in our day where we are not online in one way or another. And so it has become like a human right for people to be able to access things online, no matter what their particular needs are. So as Kashida, we really highly believe in it. And here's a quote from someone famous. that basically says when UX, or UX means user experience, when user experience does not consider all users, shouldn't it be known as some user experience? So it really does make a big difference in how we see things when we think that all users are using our courses or our learning programs, and not just some people who don't need additional consideration for their abilities. At Kashida, we have one aim, which is to give everyone the opportunity to learn simply. I mentioned this in the beginning. This is our vision. So when we say everyone, we cannot exclude those who have particular abilities or disabilities. So that's why we are very keen on making our programs accessible. So let's look at some basic ways, like some examples that we can implement inclusive design. And to do that, I would like everybody to scan this code or go to this link. Actually, I can copy and paste this link into the chat for people who want to just use that. So with this link or with the QR code, you will go to a poll that you're going to be answering questions. You can do it over your phone or on your laptops. So you're going to be answering questions through it. I will give you all a minute to get online with that. And then we'll get started. Okay, is everybody, or let me ask it the other way. Is anybody not yet on the link? Just unmute and let me know if you are not yet there. Otherwise, I'm going to assume you are all there and we can get started.
I think Ala had a raised hand.
I need you to unmute in that case, لأنه I cannot always see the hands. So Ala, are you on there now? Okay, Ala, are you there? All right, well, I'm going to assume that everybody is, I'm going to stop actually sharing my screen for a second and just try something here. Okay, 1 second.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so yes, if you can please answer the first question. What is the recommended number of characters per line according to the standard, which is, we're going to talk about the standard, but it's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. What is the recommended number of characters? So if you just click on the answer, check my screen again to see the results.
And this is basically for the length of a sentence or the length of a statement.
Yes. Okay, we can see the answers quite split. So actually, their recommendation is 75 to 80. That's the recommended number of characters. Go to the next one. All right. So next question, which button is more accessibility friendly? The one to the left or the one to the right? Do you see the question or not yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Question.
I don't see any results yet. Maybe it takes time to update.
Yeah. It went out. It left.
Okay.
Okay. Now it's back.
Okay. I'm not seeing the results. Did
Yeah,
people
I've
already?
answered.
Okay, here, I should click on responses. There we go. Okay, so people are choosing the one on the right, which is correct. And the reason is that we not only see an icon, but we can read what the button is about. Great. Next.
He claps.
Sorry?
There are some claps for the.
Next. So which copywriting is more accessible? So here you can read the text so that you can compare both. Okay, somebody started off putting on the left, move to the right. Okay, someone on the left and 4, 5 on the right. 2 on the left. So actually, let me ask one person who chose what's written on the left to explain why they chose that one.
That was me.
Who's that?
Ruba.
Ruba. Okay, so Ruba, can you tell us why you chose this one?
I chose this one because I felt like the statement is very clear, like healthy eating and the digestive system.
Okay.
I also
like
like
the
Ruba
more
chose this
statement,
one.
yeah, more of a statement rather than just you know, 2 chunks of words.
And can someone from the ones who chose the one on the right explain why they chose this one?
Well, yeah, I can say why I didn't choose the left one. It's Lana because it says healthy eating and digestive system, but nothing inside the text says anything about healthy eating and digestive system. Whereas on the right, it says right foods, better health. Then you have the food, the fast foods, the sugar, and then it's like, it's super obvious it's about the food. I mean, the left says WHO, which is like more credible, but you know, I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't really consider the content. I considered more of the kind of phrasing.
Okay, so let's just, we have somebody who just joined us. I want to make sure that it's Nadine, right?
No, she joined before. She just
she joined before.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nadine, you are on the quiz with us. Is everybody on the quiz with us? All right. Well, and if anybody is having issues, you can always just write a note in the chat, and we'll get you sorted. So,
are there other reasons for choosing the right? I'm very curious.
So actually, the more accessible is the right on the one on the right, and the reason is that if you read this sentence, it's a very long and complicated sentence. So the structure of the sentence for somebody who might have different kinds of disabilities, whether they are listening to it, it might be longer and harder to understand it. And also for people who have cognitive disabilities, then the one on the right is simpler. It's saying fast foods, extra sugars, and salt are bad for your health. It's very straightforward and a short sentence versus the one on the left is 3 lines of one long sentence. So for cognitive abilities or even for maybe hearing impairment, it might be a bit more complicated.
Like it doesn't say anything about healthy eating. And the person who's gonna hear, like, is gonna be waiting. Okay, now what about the digestive system? What about the healthy eating? Nothing in the test says anything about it.
Could be. Nice. All right, moving on to the next one.
Yeah, I think Reem had her hand raised. I don't know if she.
Yes.
Reem.
Reem,
لا,
you'd like to say something?
yeah, I
Go
just
back.
wanted to add something. لا, just the way I thought about it, I chose the option on the right. And basically, I was looking at it not just accessibility for people who have a certain hearing impairment or visual impairment, but حتى accessibility for people who English is not their first language. So using a simpler language might be easier to reach a wider audience of people, not just assume that everybody can understand complex phrases and statements.
Then sentence structures.
That's
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. That's a good point also for language differences. Very true. So next question, which HTML structure is more accessible? The one on the left or the one on the right? I'll give you a few. It's interesting. I'm seeing X's and check marks. I'm not sure what the difference is between them, but
It's a complex one.
that's a complex one. I would have thought also it's the one on the left with the header and the footer that are on the top and bottom. But what's the challenge with that is that then there's a header and a footer, but then within each section there's also a header and a footer. So that might be a
we
bit
have
too
to consider
confusing.
the user interface.
Yeah, so it might be too confusing to have two headers and two footers, and whoever is not able to see visually, because when you see this visually on the one on the left, the colors help you a lot. So the colors are helping you distinguish that there's a header and a footer, and that the section in between is different. With the header and the footer there, they look different. But we need to consider people who are visually impaired, and they cannot see this visual distinction of like the colors and the shape even. So it's actually the one on the right that's.
Can I also add to that?
Yeah.
And the reason why I chose on the right one is because when we consider the space that we're accessing information as a full space, like a big room, there's a user interface. There's an aspect of designation of spaces where the section, the structure is clear. And then the content itself has header, article, footer. So it's the mapping of the right side is a clear designation of spaces. And then within these spaces, which is like you see the header, article, and footer are within that section. So like the section 1 could be the top banner of a website or an interactive object or a video or whatever it is as a line. And then the navigation is the menu or whatever it is. The other section can be a side content. And then the lower section can be the things like controllers, pausing, or even moving forward to the next slide or the next page.
So sorry if I can jump in, like I'm one of the ones that picked the left actually, but after your explanation, I also realized something that we need to consider, and correct me if I'm wrong, but also the screen readers that are used for accessibility might read the one on the left a bit very different because screen readers follow a certain structure.
Yes.
Of hierarchy of information. So the one on the right actually makes a lot more sense for a screen reader because it's going to focus on reading the section in the right order. Otherwise, the other one would have probably gone header, nav, footer, aside, and then inside. So I think that's another
Or
consideration.
even might have read the header and then the header inside the content.
Inside, yeah.
You know, and then not given the orientation of the space. Like, what section am I looking at right now?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly that, Ranim. And like often with there's a default way of screen readers to navigate through the content within a space on the screen, but also we can sort of control it and say, okay, don't read this part or don't include this part in this, and as the screen reader will mention it. But with default, let's say, codes for sections like header or content or body text or footer, these are things that the screen reader will read automatically.
All right. Next. Which option is more accessibility friendly for videos? All right, so I think everybody is voting for the one on the right, and it's true that's the one that's more accessibility friendly, because then people who are having visual hearing impairments can read the text in the transcription, and not just, provide the sound for people who can hear. Next. Okay, which option is the AA level? Again, we're referring to this guideline, which we're going to discuss. But which option is basically recommended for the color contrast for the larger size text? So different options are available in the answer choices.
And just to clarify for people who might not be graphic designers or know, the lower the ratio is the lower the contrast between the colors. So like if you have white against black, it's a very high ratio. It's fully contrasted.
Yeah, so it's not an easy question. I think this is a bit related to people like Ruba was saying, who know a little bit more about design, and also the guidelines are quite specific on this. So the right answer in this case is 3-1.
Which means a relatively lower contrast, yeah.
And what matters is that nobody said no special requirements. So what matters for you to know out of this question is that there is a need for contrasting colors and for basically making it clear the difference between large size text and smaller size text. That's for the people who have hearing impairment.
Visual.
And not those who have visual. No, those who have hearing impairment, they need to read. Or visual impairment, true, actually, for people who have visual impairment who are not completely blind, but who can see to some extent.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there are many people who can see, but not as well as others. And so this size of font or contrast of colors will matter for them in terms of accessibility. Next. All right, so which option shows better use of link labeling? All right, I need you to be a little bit quicker to answer because we're running a bit short on time. Good. Okay, we have 5 answers so far. All of them are saying the one on the left. And that's correct, because when you say read article, it's very clear that this link will allow us to read an article versus the label just more for someone who might not, basically, maybe they cannot see it, so they are hearing it. By hearing more, they are not sure what they're gonna do by following this link. More of what? So read article is much more descriptive. Next. Which option shows the proper use of the H1 tag, heading 1? H1 meaning heading 1. The one on the left or on the right? Okay. I'll wait for one more response and then we'll... All right, so everybody is saying on the one on the right, and that's correct, because this way we are differentiating between the title and the subtitle. So in this case, visual design is a subtitle within accessibility in design. And so you see that the accessibility in design is given a heading level 1, and visual design is given a heading level 2 because it's sub to it. Correct. And the last question. Which pattern is easier to read? So if you're organizing information on a screen, which pattern would you follow for being accessibility friendly? And that was a very quick response from everybody. Okay, so we have a split here compared to the previous questions where you kind of had consensus. So I'm going to ask whoever chose the one on the left to tell us why.
So that's me. Honestly, I think I was thinking also again about the screen reader but I couldn't remember if the automated screen reader starts top to down and then goes right or goes left to right, but I remember it was top to down. And also, so that's why I went for that with the thinking of the screen reader and the automated kind of path.
Yeah, Raneem, you're absolutely right about that in terms of especially when converting language, left to right and right to left languages.
Yeah.
It's very applicable in terms of the order, the default order of the content sequencing. So, but it's not relevant, particularly because these are most of the rapid development tools that are online tools like Elucidat or things like that. This is what their default sequencing of content, but it's not relevant to how people their eye follows material on the screen or.
Yeah.
So which one's the right one?
It's the one on the right.
The right one.
So
Okay.
the Z is the pattern that's easier to read in this case. Okay, so this was just a little exercise to get us in the mood of, if putting ourselves in the shoes of somebody who might have a particular disability. And this is very important because really one of the best ways to think of accessible design is to try and, what Shruba actually always tells us, to try and close our eyes and hear the content, or close our ears and just try to watch a video. So really to, as much as possible, put ourselves in the shoes of somebody with accessibility and see how they are perceiving it.
Yeah, and this particular note is really to avoid cognitive overload, because we, when we're visual and we're able to see and hear things, we have a certain adjustment to that cognitive overload sometimes. But when you have to rely on one sense, then it's even more difficult, and it might be overwhelming.
Yeah. All right, so you've seen in the questions that we mentioned a few times the WCAG. What is it? It's the acronym for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And basically, it's what the name says. It's guidelines for how to make web content accessible. It's a standard that's international. And by following it, we aim to make web content more accessible to people with disabilities, whether it's vision or hearing or cognitive or even motor impairments. We have to think that sometimes there are people who are not using a mouse and cannot use a mouse, or cannot maybe even use a keyboard, and maybe they are using voice commands. So sometimes we tend to think of accessibility as just vision or hearing, but we need to keep in mind that there's also cognitive and motor impairments. And the WCAG is organized or is founded on 4 principles. The 4 are: first, perceivable, meaning that information presented should be easy to perceive for anybody. Perceive meaning that anyone, like through one of the senses, we need to be able to take in this information. If it's not through our eyes, we should be able to take it in through our ears. If it's not through our ears, then through our eyes. Information also needs to be operable, meaning that anybody should be able to navigate through the information and content. So if I cannot use a mouse, I should be able to use a keyboard. If I'm not using a keyboard, I should be able to use voice commands. So there needs to be availability of different navigation options. It needs to be also understandable. So if I'm presenting instructions, those instructions need to be clear for anyone. One example is if I say, answer the question below, please answer the question below. If you are able to see the question, then you are able to see that it's a multiple choice question. It's very easy for you to know, this is how I'm going to answer this question. But somebody who is not able to see the screen, and you're presenting them with a multiple choice question, and you say in the instructions, they're just hearing, please answer the question below. Well, are they supposed to answer an open-ended question? Is it a drop-down? What kind of question is it? So making it understandable by giving clear instructions. And it needs to be robust. This is in the sense that any kind of information we're including needs to be able to be read by screen readers. So meaning that for example, I cannot put a picture of the text like this. If I put a picture of this slide, then a screen reader is not able to read it. So information has to be presented in a way that readers can actually access. And for each one of those principles, there's a list of guidelines that you can follow in order to make information perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And so here we're showing examples. So for perceivable, for example, we have alternative text for visuals. So for example, somebody who can see a visual of a chart, of a pie graph. But somebody who cannot see this pie graph, then they need to have alternative text, which means text that the screen reader will read to describe the pie chart. So they will hear, there is a visual of a pie chart divided into 3 sections. One of the areas is 7% and it represents XYZ. So basically reading a description of a visual. Another example of, for example, operable, we were saying that if I cannot use a mouse, especially people with visual impairments, they are not using a mouse, they are using a keyboard. So we need to make sure it's the content is accessible with a keyboard. Understandable. One thing I mentioned is to make the text clear in terms of instructions. Also, another example is that the language of the page should be identified with the HTML language attribute. And robust. So here, basically, when the screen reader is reading off of the screen, it will read heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, so that it gives the learner kind of a structure as they are reading, and they understand that this is the title of the page, and this is a subtitle, and now we are moving to the text within the page, without having the visual ability to see this kind of organization. And we will be showing you with the course that we are doing some of these things in a little bit. And at Kashida, so actually the guidelines are divided into 3 levels. So you might choose to have the A level from this standard, which means that you are following what is the very lowest or bare minimum level of conformance. There's the next level, which is like the mid-range of conformance. So you're making it, you're integrating things that should be there for people with accessibility needs. And then the AAA is like the hardest level. So it's like you're going up in levels of conformance, and including things that are nice to have, but not as necessary. And at Kashida,
I want to add something about that, Aya. Sorry, go ahead. You were saying at Kashida,
yeah.
we do
So at
offer.
Kashida, we are usually recommending the AA level for the.
Yeah, I wanna say a comment about like why A, why AA, and why AAA. So when it comes to like right now, if I open any website or let's say an LMS and I use my screen reader, there is a minimum, let's say, function simply because of like coding language and because of the nature of how we add content on the screen. It's typically probably like conforming to A and not really necessarily, because most visuals are not don't have alt text, let's say. So from that perspective, A is like really the bare minimum that any website or anything that is online should have. You know, at least for visual material, they should have alternative text. But when it comes to interactive elements, like buttons, like interactivities on the screen, drag and drop, or matching, or multiple choice interactions, or anything where the learner or the user has to interact, A would not fit the, let's say, claim that a course or a material is accessible. So when we jump a little further to AA, then we ensure that also interactions, the sequencing of material on the screen, and the use the assumption that, let's say, people with disability will have tools to use to aid their access to information, but we have to have that background information available to them, like using a screen reader. Then we can assume that getting the level AA allows us to have certain interactions, whereas meeting the standard that is required for AAA would mean that we probably cannot even have any interactive elements, except for very single direction buttons. So it's next or open this. We cannot have layers of like open something and then close it. So it's a very high level to achieve to ensure any of our standard, let's say, interactivity aspects that we require for a learning experience. So this one is typically adopted by let's say, government agencies, where you will see a website being really, really extremely text-centered and boring, very minimal and basic layouts to ensure really like anyone will not miss anything on this screen.
Yeah. So
So
true.
it limits
usually,
a lot our user experience, our flexibility of any user experience.
Yeah. So that's why we're recommending the AA. And so I'm going to start showing you the example of our course that we are right now working on. It's called the Human Rights-Based Approach to Programming and Advocacy. So this is a course we are doing for the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner. So it's called OHCHR. I don't know if some people are already familiar with this arm of the United Nations. And what they want is a course on human rights-based approach to programming and advocacy. And this, what you are seeing here, is module 1, the first module in this course. This is the landing page for it. And so I will show you now with the screen reader how it's reading all of this content. So I'm going to open the screen reader here for a second.
Okay, Module 1 Subsection 101 Courseware. Ochre logo blue. Frames. Main landmark logo of United Nations Human Rights Office of the Commissioner. Graphic logo of 75th anniversary. Graphic logo of United Nations Human Rights Office of the Commissioner.
So you see now it read the logo. And this actually it's not reading the actual logo because the logo is an image. So what we've done is we've included alternative text to this image so that the screen reader knows how to describe it.
Graphic logo of 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Dignity, freedom and justice. Graphic for all. Graphic for all.
So now what it read is the second logo, and actually even the sequence of these, like, do we want to start the reader reading the logos first, or do we want the screen reader to start off reading the title of the course first? These are choices that we make based on our understanding of the user experience, and it's an intentional choice. So it's not random that it started reading the logos. We just thought about it that if we want to mimic the way somebody is seeing the information, they start from the top of the page and they go down. So we started with those first. And what I'm using now is actually the keyboard to go down from one element to the next.
Human rights-based approach to programming and advocacy.
So it then read the course title.
Module title, what are human rights?
So you heard here it said module title. This is not written on the screen, but we thought it's important information that visually people can tell that this is the title of the module because of the visual treatment. But people who are not able to see, they're relying on their hearing, they would not have this distinction. So we added the words module title as alternative in the like behind the scenes, basically, for the screen reader to read it. Then
graphic image of Firas.
So graphic image of Firas. Firas was introduced previously, so they know who Firas is. And so we are describing that there's a visual representation of him here.
Button hotspot on Firas.
So you see a blinking button. So this is saying button hotspot on Firas. So the learner then knows that they can actually click on this button.
Graphic image of Rasha. Button hotspot on Rasha.
So the same. And by clicking enter.
Rasha heading level 3.
And you hear here, I clicked enter, so I entered the button of Rasha. And it says that the word Russia is at the heading level 3. So I understand that this is a title.
Heading level 4 like you, personal state, heading level 4 like you, I am learning about HRBA through this course.
Again, so they're mentioning the heading level, so I know that I am now entering into the lower, like the text within this bigger title. So I won't go over all of this. This was to give you an idea of how it's working.
Hotspot on Russia button.
So let's go next.
Section. Slide.
Can I ask a
Inspiration.
question, Aya?
Yes.
Okay, so the person who
Not
cannot see
calling
or visually
controls
impaired,
toolbar.
will they know,
Module-
like heading level 3, are they also familiar with these
PowerPoint slide.
points?
PowerPoint slide. X. Type here to search. Note. NVDA. X. Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah, now you can talk.
Yeah, now I
Okay,
can talk
so
because
realized.
I needed to close the screen reader. Otherwise, it keeps reading a lot. So then I cannot speak over it. Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yes. So for example, if the person who's visually impaired, are they familiar with these notions of heading level 3, heading level, like, so they will
So
have to know
boring,
also.
but yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. They're used to using screen readers and these kinds of basics of how to use a screen reader is not something that we need to go over. They need to already know how to use a screen reader. And if they do, then they understand this kind of structuring usually. So we try to make it as clear as possible in terms of the sequencing, in terms of the descriptions. I want to show you a page with a, I want to show you this page actually, and I want to show you a page with an interaction to see how it will sound like. So I'll open the screen reader again.
Okay. Module, knowledge session, Microsoft Teams. Main landmark outline, heading level 1, currents, heading level 1 outline. Current section, 1, the concept of human rights.
So visually, we can see that there's a highlight on the concept of human rights, knowing that, indicating that we are here. But for people who cannot see it, we added alternative text to say.
Heading level 1 outline.
No.
Current section, 1, the concept of human rights.
It's saying current section, so that people can realize that now we are here.
Remaining sections include 2, the International Human Rights Framework. 3, the International.
So basically, it's also saying the remaining sections include da-na-na-na. So it's mimicking how somebody was visually reading this slide. I want to go to a slide with
Section. Slide. Question on the definition of human rights.
So this is now you're seeing here. No, I want to show you. Okay. So you will see here one of the examples of an interactive slide.
Heading level 1.1. The concept of human rights. Heading level 2, defining human rights.
So heading level 1, heading level 2.
Please answer the question below. Graphic image of Russia, button HOTS. Which of the below are considered human rights? Select all that apply.
So by saying select all that apply, we are basically indicating that they need to select answer choices from the below. So then
checkbox not checked. Right to life. Checkbox not checked. Right to health.
So here you see that we are actually not describing the icons next to each answer. Can somebody tell me why? Does anybody have an idea why we did not include a description of the icons?
Because there's already the text descriptive of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, confusing.
Exactly. So we need to remember that, as Ruba was saying, we don't want to overload people whether visually or with the alternative text. So what we need to focus on is adding alternative text when it's actually leading to an understanding of something on the screen. And in this case, already there is the text describing the icon. And the icon is just for aesthetics. It's not for transmitting information. It's just to make it look nice. So by saying, let's say, person holding up their hands with a heart behind them, is it really helping the learner? No. The text is already there. Right to life is what's describing this image. So we skip over it. We don't add it to the alternative text. So I'm just going to choose anything now to show you another
Image of Rasha graphic. Section, slide, characteristics of human rights.
Okay, so here's another example. So this is what Ruba was saying, that also, you know, there are certain interactions which we include usually in the design of our programs, which we can make them into the to conform to the AA level, but this would not work with the AAA level because it does require certain navigation and certain interactivity, which still meets the AA requirement in this case. So if we go over it, we'll see
Heading level 1.1. Heading level 2 characteristics
going
of
over them
click
quickly.
on the right and left arrows to navigate the carousel below.
So the instructions are quite clear. Click on the right and left arrows to navigate the carousel below.
Human rights are, heading level 4 universal. They apply equally and indiscriminately to every person and are the same for everyone everywhere.
Do you think we included a description of the rotating globe in this case?
No,
No, because there's really no need.
it's not universal, yeah.
This is for universal. So now you will hear how the buttons are described, because we have a right and left button.
Button arrow for next carousel slide.
Button arrow for next carousel slide. So here actually we had to be careful, because if we said arrow only, button arrow, it wouldn't be clear whether the arrow is taking us to the next carousel slide or whether it's taking us to the next slide in the course, right? Because you see here, there's a button in the bottom right corner. And that's also an arrow, but this is a different arrow than this. So we need to be very, very careful to describe this arrow as compared to this one.
Button unavailable arrow for previous carousel slide.
So here it said button arrow unavailable for previous carousel slide, because the carousel, we're starting off with this one, we're going this way. If there's no slide before yet, so it's unavailable. But if we click here,
Unavailable. Inalienable heading level 4.
okay,
This means they process under clearly defined legal circumstances.
all right, then
Button arrow for next carousel slide.
button arrow for next,
Button arrow for previous carousel slide.
button arrow for previous carousel slide. So the person can, with their keyboard, easily choose whether they want to go forward or backward.
Clickable content mainland mic meet NVDA. OK but
So there's more multiple choice questions. So this was just to give you a bit of an idea of what are some of the considerations we've been integrating into the design of this course. There's many more. We have hotspots, we have accordions, so different kinds of interactions. And so each one requires a consideration for design, but also for then on the other side, development. So the person on our team, Rashid, who is actually developing, making this possible, this kind of interaction, also has to put a lot of work into organizing the flow and the sequence and creating layers. And so it's a whole world to go into. And we're quite excited about what we've been able to achieve so far. And there's still a lot for us to learn and to continue with. And actually, what I want to also show you is this checklist, which was developed by one of our colleagues, Sharon, who's was not able to be with us on the call today, but it's a very, very well done checklist that goes over every one of the principles of the WCAG guidelines. You remember them by now: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So it mentions every principle, all the different guidelines that are related to it. So these are available online, but she organized them in a way that's quite easy for use as a checklist. So each guideline with the criteria for its success, description of it, and then also mentioning whether this is related to the AA, AA, or AAA standard. And then you can also here by writing, yes, you are saying that you've completed this or not completed this in your work. So it's like a checklist to help people with ensuring that their programs are adhering to the AA level or AAA or whatever you choose. And you see that actually there are things that the learning experience designers need to pay attention to, things that are for the designers to pay attention to, and things for the developers to pay attention to. So they are basically organized or categorized in this way in this checklist. So it's a super useful checklist that you will have the chance to actually download it. We will be sharing it at some point this week for you to be able to download and have this reference for the future. Continuing with the presentation, we don't have many more slides to go, just a couple more considerations to keep in mind that when ensuring that content is accessible, we need to also consider the delivery channels. So the delivery channel on which we are putting our content should also be accessible. So we need to make sure that the platform itself, you know, that the screen reader is not just going to read the SCORM object, the actual course we are developing. It's going to read all the navigation things around it. It needs to have the entire experience outside of just the course itself be accessible as well. So platforms such as Open edX or Moodle, they provide this kind of accessibility. And these are two of the ones we often use as platforms for delivery channels. To summarize some of the common pitfalls that we need to be aware of while designing content. So one of the pitfalls is only to show information in an image or video, and what we can do about it is actually to describe the images the way you saw now, descriptions in the course we did, or if it's a video, providing transcripts for the video. Another pitfall is to spread content all over a page. So organize content very nicely on a page, then rely on the text sizes or placement or even colors in order to divide the content. But in fact, people with visual impairments would not be able to follow that. Instead, what we need to do is to follow a linear and logical layout structure with the HTML5. So basically giving labels and saying heading level 1, heading level 2. So this kind of organization is needed. Also, another pitfall is to expect that people will be using a mouse, which might not be the case for everybody. So this is why actually one of the activities we avoid is matching activities. You know, when you need to click something, drag and drop it, or yeah, so sometimes like particularly the matching, like move an item from one place to another using the mouse, or on your phone you might use your finger to move things. That's not accessible for all. So instead, we need to create activities that are accessible with a keyboard. Also writing uninformative links, like read more, but not giving more detail. So for us, what we do is often, and maybe it's not now in the, easy to show you in the course. Let me just actually show you quickly. I'll move quickly through these to show you how we are labeling I want to give you one example. It should be coming soon, this example. Not yet. Okay, 1 second. This is an accordion style. Yes, here. So we are saying read more, but then we are giving a description of what the link is about. So this is a link that is taking learners to an external page, and it actually says the title of the link, and we didn't just hyperlink read more. So read more, and then we gave the title, Overview of Syrian Arab Republic in OHCHR, and the reader will actually say link, Overview of Syrian Arab Republic on OHCHR. So there, it's very clear for people what they are going to click on. So yes, using descriptive links is very important. So we need to consider that assistive technology is being used, and therefore we need to emulate the keyboard, like basically consider that people are using a keyboard. We need to remember that some people cannot read content presented in images, so we provide alternative text. Assistive technology can tab from link to link. So if they click tab, it's easy for them to jump from one link to another, but we need to make the links descriptive. They can skip from heading to heading, but we need to give them the structure clear to say heading level 1, heading level 2, so they know how they're moving. And we need to caption the audio. So whenever there's audio, we cannot just rely on the screen reader or their assistive technology to be able to caption the audio. We need to provide that ourselves. And I'm sure you've seen the difference sometimes when you're watching a YouTube video that has the subtitles already, let's say, done by the person creating the video, versus when you put captions on and basically the assistive technology is trying to understand what the person is saying, and you end up with subtitles that don't really make sense. So if you want to say something, Ruba?
No, Mazboot. It's like really common and like really annoying when it's automatically captioned.
Yeah, exactly. And there are many online resources you can use. Here are a few that we've chosen or we've used for this presentation. There's many more online that's really readily available. So that's it. I'm happy to hear any questions you may have about anything we discussed. Floor is yours. You can just unmute and ask your questions, raise your hand, or even if you are not able to do that, you can write in the chat any questions.
And did you find it helpful? Was there something that was really confusing? I think someone is writing a question.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Well, first, thanks a lot for this, Amjad. It was very informative, super interesting. I wanted to see or check. I'm not very familiar with your whole process, but into as a team or as Kashida, do you provide courses on how to design for accessibility? I mean, do you teach this? Do you have a curriculum for this? I don't know whether there should be a specific background in web design or in design or mobile.
No, I think
we don't actually.
Yeah,
we don't actually provide like courses, but for us, we really believe in learning in general, and we're kind of on a mission to get learning experience designers and key roles in designing learning experiences, including art direction and the programming and all that, to like and really on a mission for the community to improve itself. So we're constantly there are several opportunities with us as Kashida. There's internship, and there's also these webinar series and opportunities like that where we have public sessions. But generally, our work is really to design learning experiences for our different clients. And whether they're NGOs or corporate or higher education or K-12, it's always a different learning experience. So, but we always really do encourage that the content and the material is accessible to a level of AA.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to ask you like about your background a little bit, just to know, because you were also wondering if there's a specific background for that. As you saw, it's almost like a puzzle. So there's 3 different expertise, let's say, that get involved with making something really accessible and well done and mindful in terms of a user experience, whether it's someone with abilities or disabilities. And so there's programming, there's learning experience design or instructional design, and then there's the art direction and graphic design. So all these 3 expertise will need to be in synergy to be able to create something that is accessible. So what's your field, or what's your interest? Not necessarily even.
It's a bit complicated with me, but as a background, I have a degree in graphic design. Actually, what happened, it was by chance. تخرجت من زمان. It's been a while now, but I did my final year about accessibility actually, and it only happened because I did my surgery, laser surgery for my eyes, so I was kind of visually impaired for a while, having to navigate in the dark.
And doing graphic design, yeah.
That was just for a week or 2, but within this week, I had to completely be in the dark. So there was a lot of things that I couldn't do, like physically even.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing my project on that, kind of creating a website that has to be accessible. But again, I'm saying that was like 15 years ago, and it was like primitive. But that was my first contact in that. And then on a completely different note, I'm a scuba diving instructor. So I did my instructor course as well to be able to assist adaptive divers. So people who have problem physically, basically, or who are legally blind. So I have some experience in that. So the field comes back and forth, and I think accessibility is not sure. This is why I was saying accessibility is not just for people who have a certain disability or impairment, but it's just how to make things easier for everybody. When we're saying having roads accessible for wheelchairs, but also there should be accessible for parents who have children in their strollers. So this is why it's everywhere. It's not just for people who have certain disability. So this is why I think it's super interesting field, and I do agree with you guys, and it should be available for the whole community. It should be taken into consideration. I spoke a lot, but this is it.
No, that's awesome. Really super to hear.
Fala, so just to summarize, right now it's about graphic design and illustration, not much web. Digital mainly, but it's not web and HTML and development and all this stuff. I can help more in direction, I would say, design.
And how did you hear of the webinar? Just take a curiosity.
I received an email I received an email because I used to work with Heartbeat, the NGO, as a project manager, advanced. So I don't know, I just dropped in my email because I still have access to the email, and I found it interesting. I'm like, okay, this is it.
Super.
Yeah.
Well, keep in touch, because come in as your background and expertise, we're always looking out for people who are interested in this field of learning and design. So
no, definitely. I don't have expertise. I just have interest to.
Interest is the main. For me, interest is always the main source of expertise.
No, definitely interest. And then, I mean, I have a friend who's a paraplegic. I mean, so all these things combined, it keeps it a dear topic to my heart, that's for sure.
Super.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
back to you,
I
Aya.
guess I think if nobody else has questions, we can wrap it up. I guess that's it. Thank you very much for being with us today. And yeah,
I want to say thank
Uh,
you, Aya, because even with years of experience in accessible and like trying to get content accessible, I still learned a lot. Like really, every time there's something, because it's like a puzzle. We need to figure out the
Yeah.
puzzle to make it
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And a big thanks to Sharon, who's not with us today, for really leading on this on these efforts. So yeah. All right. So that's it. We
Thank you.
we thank you again, and we'll be sharing with you by email the link to download this checklist for your reference in the future.
Thank you.
Bye
Aya.
bye.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
nice
Have a good
have a
day.
nice
Thank
week.
you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.